Hello, it's Whitsun Weddings again, written by Philip Larkin. The season of the year when a tax is relaxed upon the marriages, and because of that, everyone is just wanting to get married. This is very peculiar that Philip Larkin is talking about weddings, but then he takes the narrative of the weddings from the journey that he undertakes from Lincolnshire to London. We had read the two stanzas earlier in which he just mentioned the landscape on which the train was moving fast, and then after telling us that the staleness in the 3/4 empty coach was being substituted by the fresh gush of breeze that came from the open windows and from which he was having a look at the world outside. We continue. At first, I didn't notice what a noise the weddings made. Each station that we stopped at, the weddings made each station that we stopped at. So now he begins to go further into this experience of this travel by train. He says that he did not notice that weddings are noisy. And with each station that they passed through, the noises increased. And then he gives us, there is a colon, and this idea to say that weddings are noisy affairs, he gives an extension to this thought after the colon, which a colon always is used for in a sentence. It elaborates upon or gives an extension to what has been said prior, that the noisy travel, he had never realized until now that how much of noise do weddings involve in or make a show of. And then he says, sun destroys the interest of what's happening in the shade. So this sunny noon had introduced him to the fact that what was happening beyond his assimilation, or what was happening in the shade in those churches where there was a roof to contain this voice and the walls to contain these voices, the sounds, the noises of the wedding, this was completely destroyed. He had never thought that trains, smaller spaces, would introduce him to the fact that marriages are noisy. So this is a beautiful expression, very pithy expression to say that it is light, it is broad daylight that sometimes introduces us to certain facts, and sometimes it destroys the happy opinions that we might have had of the shades. And then he continues, and down the long, cool platforms, hoops and skulls, I took for porters larking with the mails. So there were hoopings. Hooping is when, with the arrival of the train, we pounce upon our baggages and our carriages. So people were whooping there. He is now more into action. Though statically he sits in the train, but he has an eye for the movement that is going outside. There is whooping and skirling and the porters larking with the mails. means they are happy. A porter would be only too happy to see more crowd because that provides him with a living. So they were happy to lift the mails and went on reading. So he says, but I continued with my reading. See what a paradox it is. Is he reading? If he is reading, he should not have had the eye. But if he had the eye, he was not reading. But this was a kind of interruption in his reading, and because of the noise, he was forced to cast his glance upon what was going on. And he says that despite all this, I went on reading. Once we started, though, we passed them, grinning and pomaded, girls in parodies of fashion, heels and veils, all posed irresolutely, watching us go. The train is stuffed with people who are going to have their matrimony solemnized. But outside also are there bunches of people who have come to see them off. And he says that once when we started, we passed them. We saw them all. And who did they see? The grinning and the pomaded. Pomaded. This is a satirical method of saying that they are artificially made up. There is a grin over the faces of these people standing on the platform. Girls in parodies of fashion. Already fashion is a parody, but then each one excelling the other or putting up a parody is something, which is the very word spells out a kind of humor, or even goes on to the extent of a satire when he says that they were in parodies of fashion and there were heels and veils and each one was posing irresolutely. So they were still conscious that they are in public place and trying to put in their best, and they watched us go, because they were waving to the people who were pulling off in the train. This stanza is shifting of the focus from the nature, the images of the landscape, to the images of the people. As if out on the end of an event, waving goodbye to something that survived it. So the girls were waving at the end of an event and they were waving goodbye to the people who are going to survive them in the tradition of marriage. Struck, I leant more promptly out next time, more curiously, and saw it all again in different terms. So no station was different from the other, because on every one there were people bidding their farewell to the ones who had got married and who were moving after having had their marriages solemnized, were moving to their destinations. And because of this, the poet is pressed to more promptly look out next time, more curiously to see that everything was similar. Saw it all again, similarity, but in different terms, because of course the dresses could have been different, the color could have been different. And now he takes an opportunity to describe each and every individual, how he identifies the relatives that have come to bid adieu or a farewell to the ones who are now proceeding to their own direction. The fathers with broad belts under their suits and seamy foreheads. How could he identify that they were fathers? For all their responsibility they have borne all their life, they had come to have big bellies and their dresses were held by broad belts under their suits. And for all the stress, they had seamy foreheads. Mothers, loud and fat, no less distorted are the mothers. They had lost all that gentleness of their voice, and now they had become loud and they are fat. An uncle shouting smut. So the uncle was sharing the responsibility with the father and the mother. So they were shouting smut, they were overlapping, they were putting in their advices louder than the mother and the father. And then the perms, the nylon gloves, and jewelry substitutes. So, all that makeup. Already he had talked about the parodies of the fashion, and here he tells you what are the parodies of the fashion. The girls have perms, artificially curled hair. They are wearing nylon gloves because otherwise they would have done with a simple one. This time, since it's the marriage occasion, so they are in their best of the dresses and jewelry substitutes. And now he introduces us to colors. He gives us, Philip Larkin gives us the introduction of the relatives who are in the train and outside on the platform. And now he introduces us to the colors, the lemons, the mauves and olive ochres that marked off the girls unreally from the rest. So the girls were wearing the wildest of shades because this is very natural that chiefly it is the girls whose responsibility it is to keep the show up, to keep the glamour up, and to keep all that gaiety up. And this gaiety was given to them by partly the ornaments, substitutes that they had put on, and the beautiful gaudy colors. Yes, from cafes and banquet halls, up yards, and bunting dressed coach party annexes, the wedding days were coming to an end. So he says that all the cafes that were stuffed with people and banquet halls and all the beautifully bunting dressed, see the ribbons, the beautiful ribbons that we use for decoration, and the coach party annexes, now the wedding days were coming to an end. This moving away from the relatives and moving independently on their own, this marks a kind of separation. This marks a kind of beginning afresh, because the wedding days were coming to an end. The ones who were already married were now seeing off the ones who were newly married. All down the line, fresh couples climbed aboard. So the line is the line on which they are traveling, the tracks on which they are traveling, and every station is just helping the 3/4 coach to become more full, and fresh couples are climbing aboard. The rest stood round. And the ones who were not the married ones, and if they also happened to be the co-travelers, they just stood round them. The last confetti and advice were thrown. So all the advices for that fresh start of life were being thrown by the fathers and the mothers and the uncles and even the other young relatives. They were being thrown, and it was like, it was a volley of suggestions that was coming there. And as we moved, each face seemed to define just what it saw departing. So only now they have got married, but they have the shadows of the past. They have the shadows. Even now, when they have just got married, they because of the keen look of the poet, seem to have turned old, seem to have taken that responsibility. So this is what is about the grown-ups, and the children, they frowned at something dull, because the weddings had ended and because there was not any more of a show, but being part of that crowded space, the coach, children were frowning. I have put down these 3 dots because this stanza was holding something which would continue in the succeeding, the 6th stanza. So I have put in the 3 dots. This is a stylistic device that when you cut short a given sentence from the tail end, you put the 3 dots there, and if you cut short the sentence from the beginning end, you put the 3 dots in the beginning. So these 3 dots do not stand in the poem. These are my introduction, my superimposition upon this stanza. So we'll continue further, but for now we'll just try to make a quick overview of what we have studied until now. The overview says that the poet Philip Larkin entered into a 3/4 empty train, and it was very warm, all windows shut, all curtains drawn, and everything was all. And we see that this all continues over the fabric of the poem, and he says that he was in fact enjoying from his coach the outside scene, and he was seeing everything go past him when he was introduced to the fact, because there was a sudden increase in the noise, and this told him that not only has he started out late on a Whitsun wedding Saturday, but there are others also who are making way for their fresh journey. And then he speaks very discreetly and in a very light humored vein. He describes the people and he narrates the coming in and the whooping and the skirling and the jumping of the people in and the porters and everything. So this is Philip Larkin's exclusive way of speaking about a journey by train. So we, being students of expression in the given language, we need to learn somehow and anyhow how we are to make expressions of this kind. A train journey would not just mean you're carrying in of the luggages inside a train and you're meeting some strangers, but it could be like not meeting you. When we go on a journey, we meet people of a different kind, but since it is Whitsun wedding, he is meeting the similar kinds. Each one is a parody of the other. He speaks about the fathers, he speaks about the mothers, he speaks also about uncles, and then focuses upon the couples, the newlywed couples, and now he moves over to the children for whom these weddings hold no matter. In fact, they are disgusted with the idea that that whole dream incident is coming to an end. We'll continue. Thank you so much.